everybody, this is the #1 potato boss, bringing you the Final Fantasy TCG Opus 5 spoiler spotlight, Moogle Madness. We have a lot of spoilers to get through, so without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's start with the spoilers for the 3 upcoming starter decks, first with Sarah. So Sarah is a 5-cost 7,000 power EX burst forward that reads, when Sarah enters the field, you may search for one job Moogle and add it to your hand. When Sarah attacks, activate all the job Moogle you control, and you can also discard one job Moogle, and you can choose one forward and dull it. So as we all know, from the 5-cost Steiner, searching a card on entry and being an EX burst is very good, effectively making her a 3-cost forward with on curve at 7,000 power. She can search for many of the Moogle backups and forwards that are available, so she can make it so she can color fix really well in dual color decks, for getting the Moogle backup or the CP that you do not have yet. The Moogle cards are all of the Final Fantasy XII backup Moogles, and the FF9 Moogles are all good search targets, and enable it so you can run any Ice X deck and still have Moogle to search for, and the other color. And the really great thing about running all these Moogles is that when you don't need that Moogle, you can turn her into a dull ability with her action ability. This ability is very reliant on the number of Moogles that you're going to put into your deck and how that will affect your deck, because the backup Moogles are really the only Moogles that are going to stick on the board. And so, how many good backups are you sacrificing to maximize the number of Moogles you have? Are you sacrificing Jill Nabat or Devout or any other good backup? But in saying that, this is a very efficient dull. Probably the most efficient dull in the game we have so far is the Opus 3 Siva, and since that Siva costs 2 CP and the card, so essentially 2 cards from hand, this Moogle dull is just as efficient, and you can just dull one forward when you need to, as long as you have that Moogle in your hand. It is very efficient but dependent on your deck. Now I think probably the best ability on Sarah, regarding everything else, is her on attack trigger. This is actually incredibly powerful. I mean, you can have the Opus 4 Nono and 1 or 2 other Moogles, and she can attack and essentially activate all your backups. I think this is the ability that should be maximized with Sarah in order to get the most value from her. Now, because a lot of the Sarah cards reference the job, I am going to repeatedly mention this Earth summon called Hashmal, which I think is going to be very, very relevant in the Opus 5 meta. If you are running Ice Earth with this Sarah, you can make it that all your forwards are Moogle, and she can attack and activate all the forwards, including herself, which is insane value. There is a lot more that can be said about this Sarah, but maybe we'll talk about that another time. Next up is Vaan. Vaan is a 4-cost 8,000 power wind forward. When Vaan enters the field, activate all the job Sky Pirates you control, and it has an S ability, Pyroclasm, S and 1 wind and dull. Choose one forward, deal 2,000 damage for each backup you control. So Vaan is just a good card, and kind of depends on if there are going to be more job Sky Pirate backups to make his enter the field ability worth it, to essentially make Vaan cost even less. But I think that ability is just icing on the cake. Vaan's main strength comes from his special, which is incredibly efficient. I'll be more than happy to pay 4 CP for Vaan and have that special available for me the following turn. Do you know how fast Wind can ramp up its backups? If not, go see the Mono Wind Yuffie and the Wannabes deck dual series that we have. There'll be a little icon in the top right hand corner. But essentially, they can get to 5 backups on turn 2, which is really insane, and you're able to get the damage of that special really high, really fast. So it's not necessarily a late game special. I like to try to compare cards with existing cards in the meta. The most similar one is the Warrior of Light from Opus 2, where his special, he can deal 8k for S and 1 CP. This Vaan, on only 4 backups, can do that just as easily, and doesn't take up your light or dark spot, and can even do even more damage when you're on 5 backups, killing almost any forward in the game. There are so many other Vaans in the Final Fantasy TCG that you can make a special even more consistent. So you can even run the Water Vaan that can color balance your Wind Water Pirates lists, that you can just discard for Water CP early on if you don't see this Vaan, or late game you can see this Vaan and you can use it for its S special. But probably the most important Vaan for this special is the 1-cost Vaan, because you can also run Asura, and that Asura can essentially be 3 more extra copies of Vaan to special, because you can play that Asura to get the 1-cost Vaan back to your hand, use that 1-cost Vaan to Pyroclasm and kill a forward. And also, you're in win, so you have the ability to activate Vaan pretty easily, which means you can SM again. Like, this card is pretty strong on its own, even without any Sky Pirates. But if other good Sky Pirates get printed, this card will be even better. Also, I have to mention, Hashmal. You can activate all your forwards when you play Vaan, which could also be very relevant. Without wasting any time, let's go to the next card, Minfilia. So Minfilia is a 4-cost Earth backup with the EX burst. When Minfilia enters the field, you may search for 1 Job Sion of the 7th Dawn forward and add it to your hand. And also, you can pay 1 Earth, tap, put Minfilia into the break zone, choose 1 forward opponent controls, break it. You can only use this ability if you control 5 or more Job Sions of the 7th Dawn. And she herself is a Sion of the 7th Dawn. Okay, so the EX burst is very nice. But the only available Sion of the 7th Dawn forward is Y'shtola. She is a great card, and actually gives a lot more consistency for the Daduluma and Y'shtola combo decks, which was pretty much the only thing that deck was lacking. Otherwise, it was very strong. The ability of hers is actually very efficient, but has a semi-difficult condition in order for you to use it. Which, by the way, 5 or more includes herself, so you could in theory have 5 Sion backups, and she can do this ability. We only know of 1 other Sion backup, which is another spoiler, and we could talk about that after this card. Some people were saying that her ability is dependent on other good Sion cards. And while I do agree that will definitely impact her playability, I say it doesn't matter. Because of our good old friend Hashmal. You can Hashmal to buff your forwards for combat, and make them into Sions of the 7th Dawn, and then you can use Minfilia's ability to break a forward, and you're already unearthed because you're playing Minfilia. I am super excited about this Minfilia and how the different interactions can work, and I am also very hopeful of some good Sion of the 7th Dawn forwards. But seriously, consider Hashmal in all of your decks. Go grab a foil playset of them while you still have the chance. Next up, why don't we go to the other Sion that was spoiled, Elise. Elise is a 4-cost lightning backup with the drop Sion of the 7th Dawn. If you control a card named Alphinaud, the cost of playing Elise onto the field is reduced by 1. The drop Sion of the 7th Dawn forwards you control gain haste. So we don't know what Alphinaud does in this new set, so we cannot say for sure if the first part of the ability is relevant, if that Alphinaud is not relevant at all. But even as a 4-cost card, this is a very good card and puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, because this gives a certain number of your forwards in your deck automatic haste. Just by having this on the board, it's going to make your opponent think about having your hasted forwards, which means they're going to play more defensively, which means it's done half its job. Even if we take a look at the Opus 1 Red Mage that gives haste, that is a 2-cost backup, and you can pay 1 lightning CP and dull it to give forward haste. So that essentially is another extra 2 CP. If you're playing Elise and you're just giving 1 forward haste, you are essentially breaking even with Red Mage by Red Mage casting once to give a forward haste. But if you play more than 1 forward that also gets haste and you get value out of that haste, then you are getting a lot of value from this backup. The other cool thing is with Hashmal. Just by changing your job of your forwards to Sion of the 7th Dawn, you can just give them haste, and that is really, really cool and can really surprise your opponent. The creator of the Final Fantasy TCG, Kagema, was also very excited about this card on the stream, and rightly so. It also makes a certain Heretic Knight seem better when everyone was bagging on how bad it is. Check out my other spoiler spotlight, Light of Affection video if you want to know more about my thoughts on that card. I believe we're going to get a lot of good Sions. We can get an IG on the Sions by looking at the chapter cards. We don't have time for it this time, but look for it on our second episode of the podcast coming next week. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Next card I want to talk about is Ashe. Ashe is a 3-cost, 7,000 power water forward. When Ashe enters the field, if you control a job Sky Pirate, draw 1 card. And you can tap, choose 1 job Sky Pirate, and activate it. Currently, as a forward in the Sky Pirates deck, this Ashe is a 1 CP 7k, and due to the draw card effect, assuming that you get it off, and is able to activate all of the Sky Pirates. This includes Red Ashe, who has to attack every turn, so he can attack and also be active to block. Includes Vaan, so he can activate it so he can ice him again. And also includes Balthier, which is probably the most relevant, because having Ashe and Balthier on the field means that you automatically have 4k of damage anytime that you want. And together, you're able to have a lot of combo damage potential. The thing I do not like about this Ashe is that when I want to put it into a Sky Pirates deck, I'm thinking about Penelo. And if you're going to put Penelo in this deck, having Ashe hinders the buff, because all of your forwards have to be Sky Pirate or Pirate, which is really difficult in order for you to pull that off. I will likely only use Ashe as a singleton S fodder for the Heroic Ashe from Opus 2. Next card is Null. Null is a 4 CP 7,000 power fire forward. If you control card named Sarah, Null gains plus 2,000 power, and you can pay 2 fire CP and 4 any CP. To play Null onto the field, you can only use this ability during your main phase and if Null is in the break zone. So first, I wanted to say that Null is the few characters that have their name in multiple elements, alongside Warrior of Light, Vaan, and Cecil, which is something very interesting that the game has done. There's been a lot of contention about this card, so I want to clear a few points. It has been confirmed by Kageyama the Emperor does not stop Null. The second thing I want to point out is that whether you're playing Null from hand or you're playing Null from the break zone, you're essentially paying the same amount of CP. Because if you're playing it from your hand, you're paying 4 CP plus the card in your hand, which is another 2 potential CP, so you're essentially paying 6 CP to have this forward onto the field. And if you're playing from the break zone, you don't have that card in your hand, but you must pay 6 CP to have him on the field. So this essentially makes any fire card in your hand, plus 4 other CP, a potential Null if Null is in your break zone. So Null's ability is actually really cool to get back on the field from the break zone, essentially whenever you want on your main phase. But his first ability, getting a buff from Sarah, is not going to be incredibly relevant unless you have the backup version of Sarah, which makes it a lot more consistent. Which is the reason why I don't think this Null is going to be very good in the current starter deck. You could go in a Fire Ice build, you can go Majority Fire, play the 1000 power booster for Fire, Lebro, and Sarah, and mid to late game you're going to have a 4 CP 10k forward to play on demand whenever you want, which is really good. Null is an amazing 2-of in the deck because there are some remove from game effects. Although they're not plentiful, it can still ruin Null coming back, and a second copy of him would be nice when that happens. In this deck, Null can be considered a forward that you can play at all times, even if you are top decking late game and you only draw 2 backups. You have the option to put pressure and play Null from the break zone. Null enables you to run slightly less forward than you would, and still not feel starved for forwards. Seriously, in Opus 5, give this Ice Fire list idea a try, and run more backups, run more summons, which is a preferable, and run this Null, and you'll always have board presence while having the utility of all the summons. Next card is Purim. Purim is a 4 CP 5000 power water forward with the EX burst. When Purim enters the field, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 card among them to your hand, and return the other cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. You can pay 1 CP and dull, choose 1 action ability, cancel its effect. The great thing about Purim is thinning out your deck and finding the cards you want. And to boot, it's an EX burst. I believe that Purim is going to be a staple in any combo deck with water, so you can find those pieces faster. This enhanced draw card mechanic is really cool because you can choose the card that you want, and also because you're getting an extra card in your hand, essentially makes the 4-drop Purim an on-curve 2-drop. It is also very important that she is a 4-drop in water because that means she cannot be Zalarad, which has been a very good card against mono water because of all the 2-drops and 3-drops and 5-drops. I think although her ability is very strong to cancel an action ability, it is just icing on the cake. But chances are she's not going to stick on the board for very long because she can be removed easily and efficiently by many decks. But if you do manage to use that ability, you can use it on a variety of backups, like the Red Mage, the Lightning one, or the Fire one, or a number of forwards, like the Opus 4 Legendary Lightning, which her discard Lightning card is also an action ability, which you can negate. In this regard, this Purim is just a worse Emperor, but because she doesn't take up your light or dark spot, and I think because you're not playing it for that nullify the choose one action ability, she's really good. It is also cool that you can play this Purim from the 1-drop Purim when you need to. She is very strong and expect 3 of her in many of the water decks in the future. Next card I want to talk about is Doom Train. I mean, Glacia Labolas. So this card is also very good. It's a 3-cost ice summon from Mobius, and you select up to 2 of the following actions. Your opponent discards 1 card from his or her hand. Choose 1 forward, dull it. Choose 1 forward, freeze it. Choose 1 dull forward, deal it 7,000 damage. This is a very good ice summon, and you get the most value from it by breaking a forward using its 7k burn and making your opponent discard a card. Dulling and freezing options of this card is good in certain scenarios, but you usually want to go for the discard and deal 7k for the value. This card I believe can be pretty oppressive, as it is a playable summon, Hades, that you can instantly make your opponent discard a card, opening the waygate of certain bards to help you discard your opponent's hand with this one on your opponent's turn. It is also pretty oppressive because it can actually shut down some battle tricks. You can use one of its other abilities but also make your opponent discard a card, whether it's on your turn or your opponent's turn. Because you're making them discard a card, this actually forces them to maybe play the battle trick straight away because they won't have enough CP to play that battle trick, or that they just won't use that battle trick because they can't. When you're using this discard effect, you only have 1 or 2 cards in hand, you can almost be sure that they won't have the battle trick for the combat phase. This is a win-win scenario for you, is because if they had a battle trick, then you avoided a broken forward, and if they didn't respond to anything, then you just let them discard a card, and you essentially don't have to worry about the battle tricks. I imagine because this card is very aggressively costed and a versatile card, then it will see play. It might be a little limited in decks that want to use the Opus 4 Shiva, because you want to have a certain number of Shivas in your deck for that Shiva, because this Glacia Labolas is definitely not card named Shiva. I think this really makes a real choice in some decks. But in those decks that don't want to run that Opus 4 Shiva or don't want to run too many copies of it, this is a very solid card to consider. Next card is the Mobius Warrior of Light. So this is a 4-cost 7,000 power light forward from Mobius with job Warrior of Light. When Wall enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, add 1 job Warrior of Light among them to your hand, and return the other cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. When Wall is put from the field into the break zone, choose 1 job Warrior of Light of cost 3 or less. In your break zone, play it onto the field. Okay, so this seems like a really good card. Also, depending on how you build your deck, he becomes an instant 2 CP discount when you find the job Warrior of Light. This so far includes the original Opus 2 Warrior of Light card, Ingus, Refia, Arc, the backup, and Luneth. It will also include himself, and the new Refia that's coming in Opus 5, which I also mentioned in the latest Opus 5 spoiler spotlight. So he has the potential to find good cards. That's a positive. The difference why I don't really like this effect compared to the Purim effect of looking through your deck with the into the field ability is that you need to show your 5 cards to your opponent and confirm that you picked a Warrior of Light and add it to your hand. Say, for example, that you already saw 2 Cyclops during your game, whether it was EX Burst or you played it, and your opponent maybe was playing around the 3rd Cyclops. They might be thinking that you have one, and you probably do. Then you play this card, and then you pick up those 5 cards, and you show the card to your opponent, and then they see the 3rd Cyclops there. And then obviously you take the Warrior of Light, whether there is one or not, and then you put those cards in the bottom of the deck. And that means that your opponent doesn't have to play around your 3rd Cyclops. This is the reason why I don't really like these look at the top 5 cards of your deck. His second ability can actually give you a lot of value. The only targets so far are the Opus 2 Refia, Opus 2 Arc, Opus 2 Luneth, and the new Opus 5 Refia. Hopefully there are more targets for this ability in Opus 5, because currently, even though it is limited and you can still get value from break zone effects, the best one from the aforementioned card is probably the new Refia. Playing a card from the break zone is a lot of value, because you have to put it into account that it's not just the cost of the character, but also the cost of the card if it was in your hand. So playing the 3 cost on the field from the break zone already nets you 5 CP, when you already paid 4 CP plus the card, so 6 CP for this wall. And when you played this wall, you've likely drawn another Warrior of Light on his entry, making you for a lot of value. I really like this card and hopefully breathes new life into the Warrior of Light decks. Now, any card with both Enter the Field ability and Enter the Break Zone ability is a prime candidate for Magic Pot. And this card is no exception. If you're likely to draw a Warrior of Light from entering the field twice, with the first time you're playing him and the second time with a Magic Pot, and you're able to keep Warrior of Light on the field and still get another Warrior of Light from the break zone, that is huge value. At this current state, however, if there is not at least one other 3 cost or less Warrior of Light that is good and does not necessarily mention standing units, because in this kind of deck you don't really want to run a standing unit deck, I'm not sure how much this card will see play, because it contends with a lot of highly contested light and dark spots. Although I can see this deck revitalizing the water light deck. Now, last but not least is Kam'lanaut. Kam'lanaut is a 5 CP 9000 power dark forward. When Kam'lanaut enters the field, you may search for one dark element card and add it to your hand. Kam'lanaut cannot be targeted by summons or abilities of his own element. When your first main phase starts, choose one element. Kam'lanaut becomes that element. This effect does not finish at the end of your turn and continues onto your opponent's turn. Okay, this is one of the really exciting cards that can really change the meta, and just might enable a potential Fire Dark deck that has been brewing in my mind to rival the Water Light deck, but if not that, maybe just a Water Dark deck. So being able to search for a Dark Element card seems actually really strong. You might be saying that this does not really discount its cost, similar to the Sarah or Steiner that we were talking about, as this is a dark card and cannot be discarded for CP. Now, even though that is true, that this dark card that you search for cannot be actually discarded for CP, it will enable you to run a lot of those tech dark cards to deal with threats, like the Shallow Lord, like the Sephiroth, or even cards to further your own game plan, like the Backup Chaos, or even the Kefka that you might need in that particular deck. It can even help you to find your Alpha Strike, which is Zodiac, the game-winning summon when you use it correctly. Other important cards you can search for is the Forecast Emperor, which is being used a lot in the meta, and this is another card that you can just search for in your deck. But having a searcher for this Forecast Emperor is still balanced, because this card itself is a dark card. You can also find Zemus, which is not necessarily a good idea if you happen to draw Zemus first, but it is a possibility. You can search for a target that will fit your need in the situation it provides. If your opponent is spamming a lot of 2-drop or lower forwards, find Shadow Lord. If your opponent has a really annoying backup that you want to get rid of, find Sephiroth. If you want to finish the game, find Kefka or Zodiac. I think the really cool part about it is that you can find the Chaos backup. Now, he doesn't just search for a dark card, he has other abilities too. Kam'lanaut has inbuilt protection, as he cannot be targeted by summons or abilities of his own element. At the start of your main phase, you can change your element to match your opponent's. This is almost a death sentence against monocolor decks, if you're able to keep Kam'lanaut alive for one turn. There are not many ways to deal with him with mono lightning if he survives the first turn. This might push dual color decks even more, and if not that, then light or dark cards with removal options like the Opus 1 Cloud must be considered in mono decks. If Kam'lanaut becomes a big part of the meta, I would not be surprised to see mono lightning decks with the Opus 1 Light Cloud in it to counter. The really cool thing about him changing his element is that he keeps the element even during your opponent's turn, and also you're able to play the dark card you searched for in the following turn because he's no longer a dark card. There are so many cool interactions that you can do with Kam'lanaut. That if you do not care about being targeted by your opponent's abilities, then you can just change him to your own element and still get the buff from your own power booster. The other card that I want to talk about is Hashmal. Now, Hashmal is actually really good with this card because if you have Hashmal in your hand, then you're able to counter any sort of removal that your opponent may have. Say they're running a 2-color deck with Lightning and Ice, and you made Kam'lanaut into Lightning forward because Lightning has all the removal options. What they do is dull your Kam'lanaut, and then they try to Opus 4 Shiva it for 10k damage. Then you're able to just tap 1 Earth CP, play Hashmal, and be like, now he's in Ice forward as well. And he can't be targeted with Shiva anymore. Hashmal does not replace the element, but makes them so it gains the element during that turn. So essentially, on the turn that you cast the Hashmal, Kam'lanaut is immune to 2 different elements, which is incredibly strong. I'm sure there are more interactions with this card, but let me know what you guys think of this card or any of the other cards that I've talked about. There's a lot of spoilers to go through, but I hope this was informative. And if I forgot to mention any cool interactions with any of the cards that I talked about today, let me know in the comments below. Yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and share this video. All is really appreciated. I upload twice weekly and have a bi-weekly podcast, so go check that out. Number 1 Potato Boss, out.